Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is JD Gershbein. He is the founder and CEO of Owlish Communications. As I was looking through his rather long bio, which I'm choosing to not read at length today because it's fairly extensive, but I'll give you some of the highlights. So he's been a TEDx speaker. He's got his own podcast. He's got his own communications company. He's a LinkedIn expert. And one of the things I found most exciting or most interesting is he is an improv guru. So he was at Second City in Chicago, not only as a student, but as I don't know if they call them performers, but as part of the group 30 years ago, and then came back a couple of years ago now to continue to refine his improv skills. So we'll probably use some of them today. So welcome aboard, JD.
Hey, is this where I say thanks for having me?
No.
Okay, we have to wait for the later part of the show. Okay.
It's scripted, said the improv guy. Right. You can say it wherever you'd like. It would be improv. So
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks.
So you've got a lot of the boxes checked, right? So TEDx speaker, consultant, LinkedIn expert, personal branding guy. And there's a law degree in there, of course, and some other stuff, right?
Law degree? No, you must have me confused with a lawyer.
Oh, you know what? I read JD wrong. I'm sorry. A BA, that would make more sense.
There you go.
Yeah, in marketing. So I'll ask you one of my favorite questions, which is sort of how the heck did you get here in this sort of nonlinear, crazy thought leadership world?
Absolutely. My thought leadership journey, as it were. And,
yes.
Nothing has been really regimented or planned, Peter. I'm off script, and I basically tell people these days I've improvised my whole career, perhaps my whole life. And continue to improvise. So, I've been on a path that started innocently enough. Grew up in Wilmette, Illinois. Very into school, very into extracurricular activities. Very well-rounded. Had a lot of creative outlets, and then got the college degree. Wasn't sure where to go from there. I grew up in a medical household, so my father was a very dedicated man and highly respected man of medicine. So the path took me through graduate school. I got a couple of master's degrees, and then what? Had a career in sales and marketing, and then things changed for me when I sent my first email. And I've been in the digital world ever since. And when social media came on the scene, and for me in 2005-ish, a year later, I saw LinkedIn, and I was never the same. So I've really kind of carved this digital career out of thin air.
Interesting. So one of the things I've seen a lot of actually over the years is if you were to survey, and I don't have data on this, but my intuition is typically fairly accurate. If you were to interview 100 dentists and say, how many of you have studied improv? I would argue maybe a handful would raise their hands. In this world of content and thought leadership and authorship and speakers and all that, there are far more folks that have studied improv, folks that have had some sort of theatrical training, and some of it might be musical. There's something about that, the skill set, the courage, the things that it takes to package something and get on a stage and have the guts to do it, that do parlay well into this field. How would you respond to that?
I would agree, and I think there's a very fine line between performance art and leadership in business. I think these days we're encouraged to be on, and you have to be on at all times to engage with people in the right way, to engage with a high variety of people in the right way. And I literally move from situation to situation. I don't know what's on the other end. I hope that my conversation partner finds that common ground with me, and we're able to communicate effectively. But there are some that don't. And we meet a lot of people during the course of our business lives and our lives in general. And you just have to kind of have that feeling out period. Who is this person? What are their core values? How am I going to be conversational, be relevant? And
conversations by definition are improv. I mean, there's nothing worse. I'm a bit more like you in that way, where I like to just see where it goes. Like whether I'm in a meeting and I have my own agenda of I've got to hit these 3 notes, I don't have to do it in such a structured way that at 3 minutes 30 I hit bullet point number 7. To me, there's nothing that drives me crazier than either being in a conversation or a meeting or some sort of communication with someone else and they're so stuck to their script that, a washing machine fell from the ceiling and they don't even acknowledge it. They have to only go in that way. And I think, quite frankly, it's lazy that's the only way they know how to do things.
To your point, you cannot sound too well rehearsed. Otherwise, you look mechanized, and nobody wants to have conversations with robots because there's only a finite amount of responses that a robot can deliver, unless, of course, they're programmed to be improvisational. So for me, it's
right. Well,
it's
you can go to a chatbot now and actually do that.
You can't spit out random words, and I think that to hold conversations today, to open them, to navigate them, to finesse them, and to use the parlance of our times, to convert them into business wins, we have to be poised and polished. We can't be contrived. We really have to be in the moment with whom we're speaking.
Which requires listening and which requires processing, and it's a higher level and it demands more of both parties to be able to do it, but it's actually a much better experience. All right, so I want to pivot now because I would be remiss if I didn't. You are a LinkedIn expert, right? So it's personal branding, but I would say, if someone said to me, really describe JD, I would say he's the LinkedIn guy for personal branding. Right?
Well, I never self-declare as an expert, for the record. I never call myself an expert out of first person. I like to hear you, use that term, but for me, just like thought leader, I don't self-declare. Let's just say I've spent about 50 to 60,000 hours on LinkedIn.
Right. No. And so the point you made is a great point, because anybody that tells me how brilliant they are at something is you've just decreased the trust level. But what I'm saying is, if someone else said to me, describe JD, I would describe you as an expert or a thought leader with a heavy dose of LinkedIn wrapped around personal branding. So I happen to like LinkedIn. I spend I don't say a ton of time, but a fair amount of investments are made there. You and I met there. I've met some amazing people there. I've had net new client relationships there, but all sorts of relationships there. I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was probably this thing where if you're of a certain level at a company, SVP, whatever that was, you don't play there. LinkedIn is for the junior level folks looking for a job. But I don't agree with that. I mean, there are C-level folks. There's people from every walk of life there. Give me your sort of justify for me, if you will, as if you're talking to maybe a CEO or a business leader, why they should have a presence there.
Interesting you should say how the site has evolved. I have been around the social science on all of this, and I've studied the behaviors, the actions, the correspondence, patterns, everything regarding LinkedIn. And a certain contingent of people feel this is a job seeker site and will always be. And hey, unless I'm actively looking for a new gig, I'm not going to be on LinkedIn. But what we've seen through the years as part of the LinkedIn chronology, it has moved from career development through business development back to career development. We are using it to supplement our own professional timelines in whatever way is relevant to us. If we're selling products and services, if you're a speaker looking for a stage, if you're an author looking to sell books, or if you're a company looking to become industry experts, there is a LinkedIn function related to the goal. So my practice has been obviously discerning what that goal is, and then sitting down with the people internally to really map it out and use LinkedIn in the highest intellectual and emotional way to get them to that promised land.
And what I would add to that is, from a thought leadership perspective, you have to have a presence. In my opinion, you have to have a presence on LinkedIn, right? If you're writing books, if you're out there speaking, if you're a domain expert in subject X, one of the cool things about LinkedIn is, whether you're a corporate person, right, that might move jobs every 3 years, 5 years, whatever, your LinkedIn world is transportable, right? So your thought leadership, your content, anything that you do will go when you work for ABC Corp versus XYZ Corp. It gives someone a better three-dimensional perspective of who you are than sort of the resume-ish, from 19 whatever to 20 whatever, I did X, Y, and Z. It's much more robust. If I can see your videos, if I can see what you're writing about, if I can see the evolution of your thinking, and that you actually have a presence there, I would also argue, all things that considered, it's a huge tiebreaker in a business development standpoint, right? If they're looking at a consultant like you versus someone else, and someone else doesn't have the gravitas that you do on LinkedIn, or the richness.
Well, I said this in 2006 when I hung out my shingle as a LinkedIn specialist, and I've been saying it now, where we're at right now, almost 15 years later at the time of our taping. The LinkedIn profile is flexible, it is
Yep.
elastic, and it is your most important document in all of business. It is a digital asset, an asset to anybody that's interested in truly building what we
Hmm.
call a personal brand and standing out in the marketplace. And it's portable, as you say. It's easily shiftable. You can add and delete content as you see fit. You can
Yep.
reinvent yourself on a daily basis, like I do. I've gone through several incarnations of my own LinkedIn profile, and I'm
Sure.
working with people today who are not only pivoting, but going through a classic reinvention or rebrand or recalibration. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn, is it gives you this nucleus, this central
Hmm.
structure, a profile, and you can amend it constantly
And,
and
and and
shape it
I
as
would
you say.
add, yeah, I would add to that, as an author, as a speaker, as a thought leader. Here's where it gets sort of interesting from a business perspective, right? So person X is pitching to a traditional publishing house, and they've got great credentials, a great story to tell, et cetera, et cetera. But 17 followers on LinkedIn, and you can tell that it's their admin that manages it for them, and there's not much effort going into there. And then you've got that the competition, if you will,
Mhm.
that has been writing about the hypotheses that are in the book for 5 years, and you can see where the idea of the book morphed. And then there's, wow, it's getting engaged. Look at this one. Holy cow. It's not so much a numbers game, but look at the level of engagement that this thought leader has with an audience, and how we know what this book is going to do. It's going to give them what they want, because we can sort of go back historically and see that level of interaction. That's the difference between getting a good book deal and not. And I see that sort of thing all the time. Again, being a speaker, all those things. It's when you say, and I like how you said it earlier. It's not for you to call yourself an expert, but when you're selling your services, you are calling yourself an expert, right? And what are others going to do? Check you out.
Well, you have to let them make up their own minds about you.
Yes.
You have to comport yourself as any leader would comport himself or herself. You have to deliver the goods on a daily basis. And if you
Mhm.
are commanding a huge following, you are now responsible and accountable to that following for providing great content that is going to be consistent, sustainable, and and obviously recommendable. So thought leadership today, I think the lines have blurred a little bit on who's a thought leader, who's an industry expert, an authority figure, deep domain expert, call it what you
Mhm.
will. You have to
Mhm.
comport yourself. You have to visualize yourself in that role and let people make up their own minds about you. And that's all I've ever done. I've put myself out there. This is my way of doing it. You're experiencing my DNA, the way that I'm hardwired around a certain topic, and I'm prepared to speak on a number of different topics.
Sure. Sure.
But I happen to be very competitive when it comes to how we assemble ourselves online, how we build communities, how we maneuver through them, and how we gain a competitive advantage in the digital age.
Yep. Well, I like what you said. Is it's a place to show who you are and what you're about, and it's not. That doesn't mean your objective with your content or your thought leadership is to win everybody over. Because the fact that your take on XYZ is different than mine, that's a good thing, right? So, hey, if I am aligned with your thinking, or at least intrigued by it, it might be a little bit different. You're not just saying the same old, same old. That's actually a good thing. And I think sometimes people are afraid, you don't want to be offensive per se, but there's nothing wrong with having a perspective or a point of view that you can back up that's maybe a little bit different than the norm.
Hey man, as I've always said, nobody is everybody's cup of tea, and I strive to be an acquired taste.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like Brussels sprouts or kale.
There you go.
There you go. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. So, what, other than LinkedIn, right? Because I think that one of the things people struggle with is, okay, where do I put the energy? Because every social platform, so number one, your social strategy has to be a subset of your marketing strategy, which has to be directed by who you're trying to serve, right? Because people think, like, what's my TikTok strategy? And I'm like, I don't know that you have a TikTok strategy. What is your, you know what I mean? You have to sort of, why would you look at that in isolation of everything else that you're doing? So then people get a little overwhelmed with, so what do I do on YouTube? What do I do on TikTok? And what do I do there? And what do I do there? And how do you help people sort of untangle that mess of spaghetti?
Well, I explain to them the tenets of the attention economy. And we hear the phrase break through the clutter an awful lot. And to a certain point, we are breaking through the clutter. Now you have to really break through the intellectual and emotional layers of the brain
Mm-hmm.
and really target the amygdala of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many people out there as we tape producing video, and it's poorly conceived, it's ill-fashioned, it's just not striking a chord with people. It's if you're going to do it, go big or go home. Media production is where we're going to differentiate ourselves, because now people can see the real unique machine that we are, how we
Mm-hmm.
operate in front of a camera. Are we breaking our gaze? Are we stumbling over our words? Are we using too many filler words? Are we communicating? Are we articulating? Are we orating well? And I think that becomes a real piece of the thought leadership equation, is how we are perceived by others in media that have become now very vibrant and very visual. It's no longer
And
about
not
just
not all
posting
media
text.
for everybody, right? So I want to go there for a minute, because I've seen some folks that are brilliant writers whose books that and they're just they're not comfortable on video, or they're
They're
not,
flat. They're
it's
very
they're
flat.
flat, it's awkward, it's
Yeah.
academic, it's whatever. And if they're not willing to develop those skills, I would argue then they shouldn't don't put out a mediocre representation of your thinking when you're capable of excellence in different media, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to try. But if the reality is like, yeah, you kind of you kind of suck on video, I'd rather read an article that you wrote than stay in that mode. Would you agree?
Well, I agree, and it took a while to get there, Peter, because video marketing, especially video storytelling, as we call it now, is was really not a mainstream practice when I first started. I was one
Sure.
of the first people to upload video to my LinkedIn profile at a
Hmm.
time where 99 of 100 people didn't know how it was done. LinkedIn has made it available to everyone.
Hmm.
They've made their publishing platform available to everyone. So now we have these modes of outreach and expression, and still there are so many people without it. And you can't just turn the iPhone on yourself and put up 30 seconds or 45 seconds or 5 minutes of dreck. You really have to think it through, because this is your brand on the line and the stakes are going up. And if people are willing to spend 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds with you on a video, they may be willing to buy the book. They may be willing to talk to their internal people and bring you in
Sure.
for a virtual presentation or speak at a conference. You
Yeah.
really have to
Yeah.
tie that in with that first original expression.
So I want to unpack a point that you made there. So one point was you can't just turn on the iPhone, but I think the real point was the thoughtfulness of the content. Because I would argue there's a format and a time and place for highly produced. So we do a lot of stuff that's expensive in studio. It's on the money. The lighting's perfect. Someone actually touches what's left of my hair. Like, it's like, wow, right? And then there's other things that we do because of speed, because of time, whatever, that are a little more casual and relaxed. We're never doing anything like back of an Uber, Gary V running through, like, whatever, but things that are less professionally produced. But the belief is there's a message here, and you'll forgive me the casualness of the production due to time or whatever, because there's something to say. So how would you sort of thread that needle?
Well, I believe that we should be authentic and fearlessly authentic. And my authenticity is I'm a go big or go home kind of guy. I'm totally fine with myself if I were to go out there with an unkempt look, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not in front of my constituents or maybe not in front of the LinkedIn community at large.
Sure. Okay.
I believe that if you're going to deliver a message, and if you're looking to convert this message into sales moments and eventually into business wins,
Mm-hmm.
that people have a certain level of expectation on it. Yes, there are people who are checking in every day with their quote unquote LinkedIn
Yeah.
family. They want
Yep.
them to be seen in a more casual look, maybe the hoodie, the flannel jammies, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. But at the same time, I have a media background and I'm extensively media trained. And I want that training to be a part of my brand. And it shows. I don't go out there and produce haphazard videos. And when it gets to merging improvisational skills in front of the camera, you've got to have a certain authentic quality to what you're doing. So to
So
your
I think
point,
your answer
yes,
is really the authenticity, because part of what you're selling is the finesse and that,
yes,
that level of domain expertise in media, where others might be forgiven a little bit because it's really about the content. It's about what does that person have to say if they're a financial, expert and the markets are tanking. I need to hear what they say, and I'll forgive you that it's, obviously in your basement or.
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's a certain gravitas to video production at this point, and
yeah,
there are plenty of people out there humanizing the LinkedIn platform and doing these stripped down, unplugged videos of themselves in casual situations, and that's fine. There's no problem with it. But I think for me, I guess it's my demographic, Peter.
right,
I'm
right.
a boomer. I'm a little old school when it comes to some
Yeah,
of this,
yeah.
and I'm a shirt and tie, buttoned up guy, but I also know when to peel back and let people kind of see a larger window into my world. So
Got it. Am I
I think
supposed to
that's
say
come
okay,
through.
boomer now? I'm not supposed to say
You
that.
can if you'd like.
Okay.
I'm fine
I
with
think
it. You know what?
it's a horrible statement.
I connect with them.
hate
I connect with every cohort. I love what the millennials are doing. I think
Yeah,
they're the ones who are going to make this their own within the next
yeah, absolutely,
shift. So
absolutely.
I think that we can all learn from everybody at this stage. I embrace the role of leader by example. So if I'm going to
Hmm.
go out there and do it, I have to do it what's comfortable for me. Comfortable for me is investing in quality lighting, good optics,
Yep.
good
Hmm.
audio, and just being rehearsed, polished, but yet still improvisational.
Which is the key. Yeah. So this has been phenomenal. Any final thoughts, words of wisdom, pearls of knowledge? No pressure, but life
We're
changing.
all improvising. We really are, aren't we? I mean, we improvise day to day. I'm one of those folks that I wake up in the morning and sometimes the first email I look at will dictate my entire day. And I think
That could be good or
sometimes
bad.
I'm on record as saying that sometimes the best plan is no plan at all. And when you're trying to make things happen in a digital world, you're trying to advance a platform of thought leadership and build a strong, recognizable personal brand, there's only so much you can do. A lot of that lies outside your control. Someone like yourself, who is a stellar and very acutely aware community builder, understands this, that we all have different personalities. We all have different learning styles, different leadership styles. We
Hmm.
all have assets that we bring to the table. We all want to make people better, whether it's through our content, through the advice we
Hmm.
give, through working with their teams, through our video content. We all want to make people better, give them cause and pause to think and just learn, keep becoming self aware.
Great. Well, this has been phenomenal. I appreciate your time and I appreciate all you've shared with us today. Thank you so much, JD.
Likewise, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.